What's up, Taekwondoistas? Welcome to my Taekwondo journey, where we talk about how to use Taekwondo in your daily life and how to conquer your daily life with personal advice from a person that practices Taekwondo. So today is part of a leadership series that I'm starting, where we're going to talk about what it takes to be an effective leader, an empowering leader, because when we all practice martial arts, especially those who practice martial arts, we're setting an example to the world with how we are behaving, our integrity, and especially if we are managers and managing people. What I've learned in my journey is there's so many managers that don't know how to manage or don't know how to lead and empower people. They use their title to exert power over others instead of inspiring them to do what's best for them and the company and have your goals aligned and to understand your people. It is said that it's very important to understand your people and treat them as, people with talents and the motivated talents, rather than treat them as assets in the company where they don't feel like they are appreciated or valued. So what I want to do today is introduce a book that was given to me by one of the best managers and leaders that I know. He worked in one of my older companies and he managed a marketing group, and it was the most productive group, what I remember to be one of the most productive groups in the company. And people were, and his employees were so happy. Every day they came to work completely happy. They wanted to come to work. It was an environment that accepted them, appreciated them. It was a fun environment full of people who understood each other, respected each other. And I believe that that was a direct result of the leader. He was just an amazing, amazing leader. He wasn't my manager, but he made me feel respected and valued, because every year he would give me an anniversary card, a work anniversary, because we had started the company at the exact same time and the exact same day. So we were in the new employee orientation together, and it was just me and him, and I had no idea who he was. I remember when I first met him, he was pretty quiet. I was like, who is this guy? And then we were showing our passports to get everything done. I think I had a passport, but he had 2 forms of ID. Anyway, that's all I remember, but he turned out to be one of the most empowering and inspiring managers, leaders I have ever met. And he gave me this book. When I told him, I want to be a leader, this is my goal. I want to lead people, inspire people. And he gave me this book. He's like, for new managers, I carry several copies of this book around. It is the most insightful book I've ever read. I give this to all the new managers, so here you go. And he gave this to me several years ago. I read it, of course, and it was a good book, but it didn't really resonate with me. It's by Captain Michael Abershoff, who was former commander of the Navy ship USS Benfold, which apparently is one of the best performing ships ever in the Navy, that transformed the Navy by its innovative, causing more productive ways. So lately, as I've become more of a leader in my current roles, I picked up this book and I started reading it again, and it provided so much more insight to me that I could have never have imagined. And I want to share some of that with you. So when I read books, as you can see, there's a lot of tabs here. I put tabs on the most important parts. So, if I want to read it again, I just spend like 15 minutes perusing the tabs, and then I've got the book. And of course, I read some of the between as well. But I make the tabs, and for the most important parts, I dog-ear the pages. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go really quickly through the dog-eared pages and provide some awesome insight from the book based on my experience and from the book as well. So here goes. Okay, the first one is a recent Gallup study found that when people leave their companies, 65% of them are actually leaving their managers. This is a very, very important point, because most companies think that people leave because employees get a better salary or a higher position. Well, it turns out that if they do leave, if people are happy with their managers and their group, there's a 20% chance they'll stay, even with a higher salary and a better position, because they only start looking for those things when they're not satisfied. And most people don't leave jobs, they leave their managers. Why? Because why would you want to come to a place every day and spend 10 hours of your life every day when you don't feel noticed, when you don't feel like you're good enough? Psychologists say that the root of all emotional trauma is the feeling of not feeling good enough. So if you're coming to work every day and you don't feel good enough, you're not going to stay. That's just the key point here. And I've seen so many managers, they don't understand that. Actually, manager, leader, I call them more like leaders, because they're leading people. They're inspiring people. They're giving people the power to be free and be autonomous so that they can be their best. So that's what a leader is to me. Okay, so I thought that was a key point because most people never really understand that a lot of the times it's the manager that causes a person to leave an organization, not the money and not the position. So, okay. And the next thing I came across was the top reasons in the military why people leave. And I found that it's relatively congruous to the top reasons employees leave. So the top reason was not being treated with respect or dignity. The second was being prevented from making an impact on the organization. And the third is not being listened to. And the fourth is not being rewarded with more responsibility. So I found that this in my journey in jobs, this has been completely true. A lot of times I have a lot of ideas that, I feel would be more helpful for the organization, but they're just shot down or criticized, or, when that happens, I slowly start to pull in and I stop talking. So in the beginning of a role, I'm usually pretty assertive and entrepreneurial, but if my ideas are shot down without a good reason why, and I'm not explaining like, hey, this is why, or if we do it this way, this, and this will happen, and it might not be beneficial, or, oh, that's a great idea, perhaps this part can be used to make the company better, that kind of thing. But if it's just shot down like, oh, that's a stupid idea or something, I know that at that point in time, I'm going to go, that's just like what happens through my mind. I'm like, okay, make a mental note, my subconscious is saying, oh, you got to go, sweetie, So what this book teaches is this Captain Michael Abershoff, he started listening to his crewmen and he said, hey, what would make this ship better? And his crewmen had a lot of great ideas. Excuse me. So his crewmen would say, hey, rather than have, I don't know what kind of rivets they had in the ship, but it used to rust all the time. And then they used to have to repaint the ship several times a year. One of his crewmen suggested using like steel rivets or something like that instead, so it won't rust. And it prevented them from repainting the ship. It saved thousands of dollars in paint. It saved hundreds of hours of work. And so the captain just went out to Home Depot and he bought like a ton of those, and now all the ships use those instead of the old ones that used to rust all over the place. That's just one example of how listening to your employees can really, really help how processes are going. You don't have to do it the same way all the time just because it's been done that way. So listening to your employees' ideas is really, really important. If I were a manager and leader, I would do that on a regular basis. Okay, this little tip talks about energy and how it's really, really important to come to work with high energy enthusiasm, because your energy is contagious, your moods are contagious, and how you present yourself is how your employees are going to pick up on that energy. So if you show yourself as excited, can do, showing things getting done, then they're also going to, feed off that energy, especially me as an INFJ, especially because I'm very, very empathic and I pick up the energy of others so easily. So if my boss, if my manager is extremely excited and encouraging, I'm going to do a lot better than someone who is critical and sad all the time and, negative. So choose your boss wisely. Let's see. Okay, here he says, shortly after I took command of the Benfold, I vowed to treat every encounter with every person on the ship as the most important thing at that moment. That's an extremely important piece of advice that I learned from Tony Robbins when he said, when you're talking to someone, care all over them, like spew love and care all over them. So just make them feel like they're the most important person on the planet right now because they are talking to you, so they are. And when you do that, you're able to really listen and be present with them. And in turn, that makes them feel connected, that makes them feel heard, that makes them feel appreciated. And that also makes you understand where they're coming from and understand them better so that you can really get their message and understand them. And maybe they'll have something really insightful to say that could save you and your company a lot of money. Okay, this section is talking about why it's important to explain why the company is doing changes, and the importance of keeping your employees informed of things in the company. A lot of times employees leave because they feel like they're not in on what's going on in the company. They feel like they're in a black hole, and then all of a sudden changes are made and they're like, what the heck? So what I've learned in my journey also is that employers who keep their employees abreast of the news of changes, like the pulse of what's important to the company and what's going on, are the people that stay because they feel connected. The whole idea is the human need of connection is so important. And also, if there is going to be a change, explaining why the company is making these changes makes it a lot easier to get your employees on board. All right, this one is very important. He says, freedom creates discipline. So where can you provide more freedom and more autonomy to your employees? That's what we should think about, because contrary to popular belief, giving them more freedom rather than micromanaging them makes them feel like you trust them and that they can do the best that they can do. And they feel happier and they feel like they have room to grow, because, this is also touching upon the human need of growth. So when you feel like you have room to grow, that satisfies one of your primal human needs of, significance. So you feel important. You feel like you have control over your life. Certainty. You feel like you have control over your life. Connection. You feel like you're connected and trusted by your manager. And growth. You have the capacity and room to grow because you have all this autonomy and freedom. So giving autonomy is the key to productivity and satisfaction and engagement from what I've seen in my journey. And also from this book, it says it creates discipline, because employees are very thankful when you give them all that freedom. They want to give back. It's the principle of reciprocity. If you give a human being something, subconsciously they're going to want to give it back to you. But you have to give them something of value. You can't give them, it still works, like, when people hand out freebies, it still works. But if they give you a pen or something, it's great, a pen. But if you really needed a pen that day, it would have more value for you than just like a pen. So subconsciously, if you got something, you're going to want to give back something in return of value. Especially when you get something of value like freedom, you're going to give back the discipline, the productivity that your boss or manager wants and your leader wants. Okay, let's see what else is important. Okay, this one says protect your people from lunatic bosses. So true. A long time ago, I told one of my bosses, after we had a kind of a fight, I said, he wasn't my boss anymore at the time, but I said, I just want a boss who has my back. And that I have his back too, we protect each other. And he goes, sweetie, that is so naive because that doesn't exist. And at that time I was like, hey, I thought there was, I don't know. I was like, hey, I know it exists because it's happened to me before, and I'm not going to stop until I find it. I make it a point to set standards for myself, and the standard that I set for myself is to have a boss that has my back. And you know what? Several months later, I found that. So, I mean, I did find that, but somewhere in my journey, his words kind of seeped through. And for a while, I wasn't finding that boss that, that had my back, that was enthusiastic, a great leader. And I started to think, could what he said be true? But then I thought, what the heck? Why are you even thinking that? Because you've had a boss that's wonderful. You've had 2 bosses that had your back, that gave you the room to have his back as well. I mean, I'm loyal. If you show trust in me, I trust you. So just to let you know, if you have a boss that's lunatic, as it says in this book, there are other bosses out there that will protect you from that. Because it's happened to me. So I'm sure it'll happen to you. Let's see, what else? In this book, he also explains, the officers of the ship, they often have preferential treatment. They eat in a different place than the crew members. Well, this captain started to eat with the crew and talking with the crew, and all the other captains and, senior officers on the ship are like, what are you doing? You're supposed to go to the front of the line. Why are you waiting at the end of the line? I like this, what he did, because it shows solidarity with the crew. It shows that you respect them and that you're not any better than them. You are just, a leader. You're just the leader, and we're all one team. So this allowed him to get a lot closer to his crew members, and he was able to talk to them about their ideas, their great ideas for improving the ship. And that's how he was able to improve the ship by leaps and bounds. And so many other ships in the Navy started copying him, their ship, the Benfold, because it was so productive and so, leaps and bounds farther than other Navy ships. And it also works to develop respect the crew members had for the management. This one says, let your crew feel free to speak up. I think we talked about that. It's really important to allow a culture of speaking up, giving your ideas, letting them voice what's frustrating them, what's going wrong, so that we can align the crew members with things that more meets their intrinsic talents. If something is not working, it could be really easy to get them to do something else that is needed that, can more capitalize on their talent. So I totally agree with that and have experienced that as well in my journey. And he says, I treated people with the same dignity and respect I expected from them, and I made sure they truly liked their jobs. That's one thing that one of my mission in life is to make sure that people are in jobs that they feel fulfilled in and that they love. Because I've been in jobs where I feel fulfilled and I've been in jobs where I don't. And it's so much better to be in a job where you have a higher purpose, that you're helping people or whatever that you want to do. If your higher purpose is to make tons of money, then find a job that you'll make tons of money. I doubt that'll be a higher purpose of anyone, but I'm just saying that there's no limitation. So find your higher purpose. What do you really want to do? What have you learned in your life that you want to spread? I've learned in my life that, getting out of toxic jobs into jobs where you feel like you're helping people and, serve a higher purpose to humanity, that is the ultimate jackpot. So since I've done it, I know how to guide others to do it. And that's what I'm doing right now in this video. Okay, let's do a few more tips so we can end this, because it's already getting pretty long. This one is the best chapter ever, and it's called Building Up Your People. Build up your employees.